Welcome back to another long range only review. I'm Justin Heyer, and today we're going to take a look at the Zeiss Conquest V4. All right, let's walk real quick through the physical aspects of this scope. Like we mentioned, it's the 6-24 by 50 millimeter objective up front, 30 millimeter main tube, an exposed elevation turret, and a capped windage turret, which we will talk about later. These are some ARC rings that it's sitting in, and it's 16 inches long, and it weighs, let me hurry and check my notes here so I don't lie to you. It lists at 24.4 ounces, but this particular scope came in at 23.5, which is pretty nice for a little hunting scope with some long-range capabilities, not near as heavy as some of the other offerings. The magnification ring is a separate ring. It's not the whole eyepiece doesn't rotate like some scopes do. It does have a little bump right here. Not sure how well that'll show up on camera, but you're able to grab that. You can see it does have a nice amount of tension. It may be a little stiffer than what some guys want. It didn't freeze up in the cold. I had it down into like 20-degree weather, I believe, and it was fine to just grab it and rotate around. And it's certainly not loose enough that it's going to move on you while you're in the field. And with this being a second focal plane scope, they do calibrate it at 24 power, which is nice. So you just dial that thing full up to 24 power, and then your reticle is calibrated. All right, let's talk about the reticle offerings. This particular one is an illuminated reticle. They do have two other reticles, both in MOA. One is more of like a Christmas tree style reticle, and the other is just a simple minute reticle. That's what this one has in it. I actually really like that. It leaves a very clean field of view. But if you're a guy that likes to hold over both for elevation and windage, that Christmas tree style may be a little bit better for you. Reticle thickness is about spot on. I believe it's 0.14 MOA at 24 power, so it's not too thick to block anything, but it's not so fine that it's hard to pick up. It's actually a really nice reticle to shoot with. All right, let's take a look at this elevation turret. As you can see here, 20 minutes per revolution. You do have rev indicator lines down below. Not sure how well those show up. The clicks are not super loud, but they're definitely pronounced. You can feel them. For the price point, they're very nice clicks. They're a little bit softer than some of the other scopes out there, but I think it's actually more of an audible thing than the mechanical feel, because as you drop into each detent, it definitely hits and isn't going anywhere. You're not going to end up in between clicks. So nice elevation turret. The knurling is easy to grab. It doesn't hurt your fingers like some scopes do. It's just easy to get to work. It does advertise 80 minutes of elevation, and this one I was able to dial a little over 42 or 43 with a 0-minute rail on there, so advertised elevation spot on in this scope. Now let's rotate around and look at this capped elevation, the capped windage turret. So it is capped. Cap is fairly large, but then you get down into this windage turret. As you can see there, there's no numbers, right? It's just, you've got big lines for your full minute marks and little tiny ticks in between, and then the big triangle denotes 0. Now, this is my biggest pet peeve with this scope. I like to dial windage, and this turret is all but useless for me to dial windage, mainly because to reset it, you simply pull up, rotate around, and drop it into place. So if you're zeroing the scope, say I need to dial a little bit one way or the other, pretend that was my 0. Now you lift the turret, pull it back, and drop it into 0. That works really well if you're never ever going to touch the windage turrets. But like I said, where I like to dial, I really don't like this. From behind the scope, there's no reference as to how many minutes you've gone. It's very small. It's kind of hard to get to move around, which I think is actually the design intent, right? They've capped this turret. They've made it small. I don't think they want you pulling it off and dialing windage. But if you're a guy that likes to do that, that's definitely something to be aware of, that this is less than ideal if you like to do that. If you're a guy that just throws it on, you cap this turret back up. Sorry, it's kind of hard where I'm on the camera. There we go. And you leave it like that while you hunt and you hold windage, you're going to have 0 complaints. But just be aware of that, that is something to consider if you're a guy that likes to dial windage. Now, we do have the parallax over here, 50 yards to infinity. It only has a denotation at infinity and 50 yards, but it's pretty easy to dial in. It's relatively forgiving parallax. This particular model does have the illumination. It's got shutoffs in each spot between each setting. I only used it once. I'm not a big illumination guy. It did work, and I have never touched it since. So that's an overview of the turrets. One thing I forgot to mention when I was discussing this elevation turret, it does have a 0 stop, and it is a very positive stop. It's like hitting a brick wall, right? It just does not move. So I'm not going to show you exactly how to set that. We're going to link a video to the Zeiss website on the forum that takes you through and shows it to you really well. It is not hard to do. You simply take a T8 driver, T8 Torx driver, and remove 2 screws off the elevation turret. Now that is actually one thing. I don't carry Torx drivers in my bag. So if you lose it, you're maybe a little SOL. I had to actually end up going and buying another wrench since I could not find mine. But then this pulls off. Now what you can see down in here, you have a little set screw. Okay, that set screw is your positive stop. So as this rotates around, you can see it just hits it rock solid. So you don't get any thread stretch in that erector system. When it hits, rotation is stopped and it's done. Pretty easy to set. Now, if you don't look at the instructions, I do believe I put this on backwards essentially the first time. Wasn't able to get as much elevation as I needed to, but you just set it up so that as you rotate clockwise, it bottoms out on that 0. So the full description of how to do that is on that website, on the Zeiss YouTube channel, and we will link that. But I did want to show you that it does have this little set screw acts as a hard stop, shoulders out on this little boss there, and locks everything out. So once you're zeroed, cap goes back on, set screws go back in place, you're good to go. Like I said, that does take a T8 Torx, and don't lose that because that might not be something that you have in your bag. An Allen key may have been a little bit nicer, but I do like the Torx head feature better, so it's kind of a catch-22. All right, final recap of the scope. You've seen a fairly good option for those guys looking for a lightweight scope on their hunting rifles at around 24 ounces as sufficient glass to make any shot I think you'd ever need to make. I did notice some chromatic aberration when I was shooting in really bright sunlight at a white target, but even in the snow, that wasn't something that I noticed very much while shooting. So those guys that are sensitive to that, I think it controls it well for its price point. Resolution was on point with other scopes in that price range as well. Brightness, I didn't test that explicitly, but I also shot right at sunrise and as the sun was setting a few times and never noticed an issue with that either. So I think you're just fine in that department. Turrets, the elevation turret like we talked about, plenty good. I did test that in tracking up to 40 minutes. I was able to throw it on my 22 and it dialed true at 10, 20, 30, and 40 minutes, which is nice because that was only a couple minutes short of the very topped out and it tracked true all the way to there. Windage, I think I went 5. I might have gone 10 minutes on a previous box test, tracked fine. I never noticed that being an issue, but due to the nature of that windage turret, I'm never taking the cap off that thing anyway. It is all but worthless to me to dial other than to sight in. So if you understand the limitations that offers on this scope and the other feature sets, meet the needs that you're looking for, this could be a great scope for you guys that are looking for a little lighter weight option on your long-range hunting rigs. Thanks for watching. If you have any other further questions or comments or concerns, click the link down below in the description. It'll take you to the forum where you can ask me any of those. Thanks for watching.